Scrappy Peeps, Suzanna here today for ThermOWeb to share with you a project that I created that's actually sitting up at the wall at Creativation in Arizona right now. So one of the new products that ThermOWeb has released is this Deco flock, and I have 5 different ways that I am using the Deco flock. So the first one that I'm using here, I am going to use the Deco foil transfer gel, and I'm going to use that transfer gel to get some flock. So I'm showing you 2 different stencils that I've got here. One is that polka dots and the other is the chevron. I don't end up actually using the chevron on my project, but I do use the polka dots. So what you want to do to start with is you want to use a spatula or an old credit card, as I've got here. It's actually, I think it's Starbucks gift card. And you want to spread a thin layer of an even layer of the transfer gel through the stencil. Make sure that you put the extra gel in the jar and close the lid, and then make sure that you clean off your stencil and that card really well, because it is a kind of an adhesive, so it will stick to your stencils. So you're going to set those aside to dry, and you want to wait till they're clear, and you'll see what I do with those further on in this process video. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to create flocked striped eggs. So I have a piece of white cardstock, and I am using the Rebecca Meyer Designs mixed media adhesive sheets. So I just cut a small piece of the sheet, I remove the backing, and then I'm cutting a piece of the flocking. And I'm going to take the adhesive sheet and stick the flocking down on that. So you're going to put the flock actually on it, and then I'm going to remove the adhesive. Actually, I'm not going to do that. So the flock, so it's all together. Now what I'm doing using my trimmer, I'm just cutting really, really thin stripes. I'm using, actually, I'm not using a 1/4 inch. I'm using the edge of that yellow, which is the cutting blade, it's where the blade cuts into. I'm using that as my guide for the thinness of those stripes there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the backing of the adhesive, and I'm going to lay that down so that it looks like those stripes there. Now I could have done the same process, but what I really like about using the adhesive sheets is that I have a really, really, really straight line. So I'm taking off the adhesive and I'm putting that down, and I'm using the same stripe as a guide for how far, so that I get even stripes. So the adhesive is there. You're still only seeing white because I still have the covering that's on top of the flock on top of that. I have found in the projects that I worked on with the flock that if you leave the backing to the flocking on, that's a mouthful, isn't it? The backing to the flocking. If you leave it on, you're going to get less pulling of that flocking. And you'll understand what I mean once you have this stuff in your hands. It's kind of like a Band-Aid. Once you take off that protective piece over the adhesive, the Band-Aid becomes very malleable and it kind of folds into itself. And the same thing will happen with the flocking if you don't leave that sort of firmer backing to it. So what I'm doing is pulling off the backing now to reveal the orange, and that I'm going to cut into an egg shape for my layout. So that is, there you go. So I have a couple of the openings from the cut file that I saved as templates so that I knew what size I was going to need for backing that cut file there. So there's egg number 1. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to use the flocking, and I'm going to actually use the foam that it comes with, or that mine came with, and create a backing. So again, it's that same Deco foil white foam adhesive. You need a way to be able to give some substance to this. So I've cut a piece of the foam, removed the adhesive, and stuck the flock into it. So instead of running it through a foiling machine, you can run it through your die cut machine, your manual die cut machine. And I'm going to kill two birds with one stone here. So I'm going to push the flocking into the adhesive as well as then push a pattern into that flocking and or foam so that I have a textured egg. What I really love about this flocking is that I love texture and dimension in my layouts, and so I am able to get a ton of that with the flocking. So the only thing about when you run it through an embossing folder is that it does kind of break apart the adhesive on the back of the flocking. So you can see it was not quite so easy to remove, but that's fine. So I still have the adhesive on the back of that flocking, but because I haven't adhered it down, I've left it there. Next thing we're going to make here is a flocked bow. So I want the flocking, but I don't want adhesive behind it, which is what that foam carries. So I have here some of the Rebecca Meyer mixed media art tape, which is just paper on the back side. So this is an adhesive on the other side. So this is a perfect way of getting paper backed flocking, and I want it to be malleable because I want to create that bow. So the art paper that's on the that is the tape, or what creates the tape, is perfect for this. So what I've done is I've just pulled off pieces of that tape and I've stuck the flocking down into that tape. So I've put the colored side into the sticky side of the adhesive. Now I'm putting my dies on top of that, and these are the bits and pieces of the die that are going to create the bow. Run that through my big kick, and again, it's killing two birds with one stone because I'm not only cutting the die, but I'm also getting that pressure, which is going to push the flocking into the adhesive. So there is my lovely bright yellow bow. Just going to poke that out of the die cut there, and then I'm going to use some of my Gina K Designs permanent adhesive dot runner to glue that together. I could also use the Ultra Bond, but this is going to hold perfectly for this. I also don't want too much adhesive to be in places that I don't want it, because I want that inside of that bow to be loose so that it's not a flat bow. And there is your bright yellow flocked bow, which I will also incorporate into the layout there. So now it has literally been an hour, although it has only been 7.5 minutes of you watching, but that is dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the piece of flocking that's slightly larger than what I want. I'm going to run that with a shim through my die cut machine. You can also run that through your hot laminator, wait for it to cool, and then peel away the flocking and get there, perfectly flocked circles. And then because I'm using this on a layout and I want it to be egg shaped, I'm going to now cut out the egg shape. So there are all the pieces, the flocked pieces. I do have one other technique to show you with the flocking later, but I can't show it to you until I've kind of assembled a little bit more of the layout here. So I have 4 pictures of my son at Easter last year. The Easter Bunny brought candy from England, and if you have not had European chocolate is very, very different from American chocolate, and in my personal opinion, far superior. So the Easter Bunny brought English chocolate, and it was kind of a big deal, and it was fun and different, and that's what this layout is about, which is why the title says Sweet English Chalk. When the kids were little, they called it chalk instead of chocolate because it was a shorter word and it was easier to say. So now what I'm doing is just putting thin beads of Ultra Bond on the back of the digital cut file, and I am backing the cut file with photos flocked images as well as just some pattern paper, and it's Vicki Boutin is what I'm using for pattern paper, and I'm also using some scraps, as well as the multicolor piece is from Bella Boulevard. So I'm just literally going to do the whole thing. Now this cut file has designs within the eggs. Some of the eggs I'm going to remove the innards of so that I can have my flocked pieces. Some of them I'm going to leave as they are. It's nice to have a mix of the decorated eggs as well as the flocked decorated eggs. So for example here, I don't want those rows of circles, so I'm going to just use my scissors and remove them so that I can put that lovely blue and white speckled egg in there. Perfect. So I am going to fast forward through all of this because you do not need to sit here for 37 minutes as I back each and every one of those digital cut files. So that's what it looks like. So now what I did is I'm going to teach you how to make flocked dots. So they're perfect dots. You are going to take the backing, one of the plastic backings off of your Zot, and you're going to place that down on your pattern paper or wherever it is that you want to put it. Then you're just going to put a sheet of the flocking over that Zot, rub it with a spatula. Make sure that you rub across and not down because you don't want to deform that Zot, and then pull up quickly, and I liken it to pulling up like a Band-Aid, and you are going to get a flocked Zot, which makes some really cool design elements. I have used there both the small Zots and the medium Zots, and then in a minute or towards the end of the layout you're going to see I'm going to do the same thing with the 3D Zot, which is cool. It's kind of like a flocked one of those big enamel dots or a brad. It adds a little bit more dimension to the page. So what I'm doing here, having used most of my eggs, is I just want to add some visual interest to the page. So I'm going to fill some of the hearts with different elements. I've got stickers, and one of the words that's in that die cut says Easter, so I'm going to put happy above it so that it says Happy Easter. I'm going to journal in one of the circles. I've got some birds, and you can see all of those chipboard phrases that Vicki Boutin has with one of her collections. So I'm going to put a couple of those down. And again, it just adds visual interest and color to the layout there. So that is kind of the bulk of the layout. You're going to see how I do that 3D Zot. That's going to come together, and one of the other things that I do in addition to the journaling off camera is I am going to use a fine pen to draw along those eggs that have the circles in them, the flocked Zots. I'm going to just draw over the white so that it kind of pulls it together and adds a splash of color in there as well. So the rest of this video is really process video as I kind of pull things together, just kind of adding these different embellishments. The embellishments that I used I have from Vicki Boutin. I have those stickers that are from a Jen Hadfield collection, and now I'm going to do the title work. So the suite is in black, and I like the way that the black ties together the black in the pictures. My son is sitting in front of our fireplace, which is a black granite, kind of a faux granite, I believe. And he is also wearing a dark t-shirt. So the way that that black sits in that open space fills that out nicely. Now that open space was actually, it had eggs in there. It had 3 eggs, and I took it out knowing that I wanted a place that was not quite so busy in order to be able to put a title in there. These are puffy stickers, letter stickers from Pink Fresh Studio, and I'm going to use these green ones to put English in there. And then I have these older letter stickers from October Afternoon, which is just going to put that chalk in there. I tried to mix the colors up that were in the pattern paper, and I chose that particular Bella Boulevard pattern paper because it went with the flocking colors that are available. So these are bright colors that you have available to you when the release comes out. You have that yellow, you have that tealy blue, you have a green, you have an orange, a hot pink, there's white flock, and there is black flocking and purple. So the only three that I did not use in this particular layout are the white, the black, and the purple. I couldn't find a piece of pattern paper that had all of those colors in them, but I figured this was a good chunk of them and worked perfectly. So this is where I use the 3D Zot to make a little bit more of a raised embellishment. So same idea, same application. You're going to put the Zot down, put the flocking and rub on it and whip it off quickly so that you don't deform the Zot. And that, my friends, is my layout. There are some close-ups to follow so you can see the texture that's in the flocking as well as how those Zots turned out a little bit better. So I hope you've enjoyed this process video. If you have any questions about the tutorial part of it, about how I applied the flocking, please don't hesitate to leave them in the box down below. Thanks for stopping in today. I hope you're doing well. Enjoy the close-ups. Take care.